We got some breaking news for the Baltimore Ravens when it comes to their head coaching search. They have added 4 more candidates that they are going to interview. I'll tell you the names. A couple of them might excite you. One of them might concern you just a little bit. I'll tell you who I'm talking about in just a second. Real quick, though. We crossed 44,000 subscribers this weekend, and I just want to tell you thank you. Really do appreciate you guys joining us, subscribing. Guess what? We're going to be locked in all off season long. A lot of people take this time in January to relax, dial back the content. They go to the beach. They order cocktails. Not us, okay? We turn up the heat. We bring you a video every single day, all off season long. Make sure you subscribe. Tom Pelissero reported earlier this morning, former Dolphins coach Mike McDaniel will interview this week for the Browns, Falcons, Titans, and Ravens head coaching jobs per sources. McDaniels is also scheduled to interview for the Lions OC job. One of the NFL's top offensive minds is in high demand. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty big news. And the funniest part about all of this is Miami basically fired Mike McDaniel because they wanted to hire John Harbaugh. Like the second John Harbaugh hit the open market, the Miami Dolphins fired Mike McDaniel like the very next day. A lot of reports linking those two together. Regardless, I digress. Let's talk about Mike McDaniel. Personally, I do not think that I would be too interested in adding him as your head coach for multiple reasons. When trailing at half, he's 4-24 in his tenure in Miami. Quarterbacks other than Tua Tagovailoa, he's 4-11. Replay challenges, something very small but meaningful. He's 4-21. We also know he absolutely sucks in cold weather. Guess what, Mike McDaniel? It's going to be cold in Baltimore. Pretty much your last 12 games you played. Now, maybe that wasn't necessarily a Mike McDaniel's problem. Maybe that was more of a Miami Dolphins problem. Regardless, I'm just not that interested for a guy who isn't able to get it done in the biggest opportunities. And that's what you need right now in Baltimore. That's been the whole complaint, is that this team cannot win when they need to the most. Look at his opportunities over the last couple of seasons. 2022, Week 15 at Buffalo, they lost it. Week 16 at Green Bay, they lost it. Week 17 in Baltimore, 2023, remember that one, they lost it, and they lost it big. 2023, Week 18 against Buffalo, they lost it. Last year, 2024, Week 14 at Green Bay, they lost. Week 15 in Houston, they lost. Like every single time, Mike McDaniel has been faced with an opportunity to go out there and get a big win. He hasn't. And additionally, like I've been talking about for the last week when we've been doing these coaching searches, my number one goal is to get a coach in here who will reinstill what it means to play like a Raven. That mantra, that feeling has been lost over the past couple of years. Passion, strength, character, courage, intensity, while opposing one's will with a nasty and tough, determined style of play. To me, that does not sound like Mike McDaniel. Okay? Now, I'm not saying that just because he's an offensive coach, he cannot bring in a nasty style of play. Clint Kubiak, I feel like he could bring in that play like a Raven mentality back. Mike McDaniel, a guy who's known as being crazy, buddy, dapping everybody up, dancing on the sideline, wearing his big rolly, his sunglasses. He's got handshakes with everybody. He's rapping during practices. Look, that's fun for a middle school team. This is a business. This is the National Football League. What that does is it gets you fired. How'd you feel? The Ravens hired Mike McDaniel. Let me know down below in the comment section. I wouldn't mind if he got hired as an OC. I think it would actually be pretty awesome. Head coach, I'm going to pass. More head coach interviews. Ian Rapoport earlier this morning. Ravens requesting to interview Chargers defensive coordinator Jesse Minter for their vacant head coach job. Sources said potentially important candidate. Baltimore will interview former Commanders offensive coordinator Kliff Kingsbury and Anthony Weaver today. Very, very busy day for Bisciotti and DaCosta. And Minter is a guy that we've been talking about for a very, very long time because of his connections with Baltimore, because of his connections with the Harbaughs, right? 2017 to 2020, came and coached for John for that defense for 3 years. Defensive assistant started as that, and then he was defensive backs coach. Then he won a title as the defensive coordinator for Michigan for Jim Harbaugh. Now he's been coaching for Jim Harbaugh with the Los Angeles Chargers until 2024 to now. He's been with Jim since 2022. We knew that Jesse Minter, the reason we've been talking about this for a long time, is because we knew Jesse Minter would be a guy that the Ravens were interested in, that the Ravens were looking at, and that the Ravens had possibly discussed about being their next head coach. There's a lot of pros that come with Jesse Minter. A lot of things to be excited about. I mean, think about Odafe Oweh. You traded him away. I did not blink twice about doing that. In fact, I was incredibly disappointed with how Odafe Oweh's season was going early on. Turns out it wasn't Odafe Oweh's fault because he had an absolutely unbelievable end to his season in Los Angeles. In fact, he set the Chargers' postseason single-game sack record last night against New England. Also forced a fumble against Trey Baker. 3 sacks. It wasn't an Odafe Oweh problem. It was a Zach Orr problem. Jesse Minter was able to unlock it. It just feels right now that he's got a pretty decent chance to be this team's next head coach. He's got the connections. He's got the leadership ability. Everybody's drawn to him. Everybody loves him. Jim Harbaugh gives him his stamp of approval. I'm sure John Harbaugh would do the same if he was in that, stage. My one concern, though, is just a lack of NFL experience. Gage, if we can get his List 5 logo up here in a second, if you just look at the last decade plus of his coaching history, he spent more than half the time in college. Georgia State, Vanderbilt, Michigan. Now he has spent multiple seasons, 5 in the National Football League. But I don't love the fact that he's got more experience in college than he does in the NFL. And also, you'd have to trust him to absolutely nail the hire at offensive coordinator. And I don't know if I trust him to do that. Because that's the thing about being so long in the NFL, you build a lot of connections. He's really only coached for the Harbaughs. Is there anybody that either Jim Harbaugh or John Harbaugh have brought up offensively that Jesse Minter might be connected to that you would feel crazy about being the offensive coordinator for the Ravens next year? Because I don't have one. Not one. And I'm not saying he can't go outside of his connections to make a hire. I'm just saying usually when these guys do make hires, it is within their connections. Guys, they've already gotten them. Who do you think the Ravens' next head coach is? Let me know down below in the comment section. Coming up on today's show, 2 more interview requests. Bump it up all the way to 14. Then, really excited about this, we're going to rank from 14 to 1 my least favorite to favorite candidates we've interviewed so far. Something that is already my favorite is our friends over at PrizePicks. They're the sponsor of today's show. And whether you're starting a new routine in the new year or making player picks for the first time, trying something new could be hard. But in life and on PrizePicks, it always feels good to be right. With high pressure, playoff matchups every weekend and elite hoops action almost every night, the action never stops, and PrizePicks lets you take control. PrizePicks now has early payouts. If your lineup gets off to a hot start, you may now have the option to cash out those winnings before the game even finishes. With a new social feeds feature, you can share PrizePicks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Speaking of copying lineups from winners, here's my lineup for Monday Night Football. I got the less on C.J. Stroud, 237.5 pass yards, the more on Kenneth Gainwell, 3.5 receptions, and the more on Pat Fryermuth, 30.5 receiving yards. Hopefully, the Texans get it done tonight. Download the PrizePicks app and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Link to this promo is in the comments and description of today's video. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. My main man, Kevin Oestreicher, tweeting out late yesterday. Ravens have requested to interview Rams defensive coordinator Chris Shula and pass game coordinator Nathan Scheelhaase for Albert Breer. I've got a couple of thoughts on this. Let's start with Nate Scheelhaase. Look, I don't hate anybody from the McVay tree whatsoever. If you're the passing game coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams under Sean McVay and for a guy like Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, Matthew Stafford, I'd be pretty excited about your possible ability to be a head coach in the NFL. But for Scheelhaase, it just seems like it's a little bit too early for him. I'm excited to at least hit him up. Chris Shula wouldn't mind one bit either. Look, we talk about defensive names. We talk about defensive head coaches. That's where I think Baltimore needs to go next. Because to me, it's an identity problem. It's a toughness problem. It's a physicality problem. And if you get a guy in here that's a defensive coordinator, defensive mind, that can kind of reinstill that, as long as you get a good OC, I'm not going to worry about offensive production. You got Lamar Jackson. I worry zero bit about this offense being able to produce. They produce with Greg Roman as this team's OC. So as long as you get a good DC in, make sure he crushes that hire, give me a defensive-minded head coach. And Chris Shula would be a great one at that. What he's been doing for the Los Angeles Rams over the last couple of years has been really, really impressive. Their defensive unit is one of the best in football. Who's your nightmare Ravens head coach? Let me know down below in the comment section. Be honest with me. Who is it? I'm about to rank my nightmare, number 1, as Matt Nagy. Okay? For the rest of today's show, like I said, ranking head coach candidates. It's going to go 14-1. 14 is the guy I would least want to be your next head coach. Number 1 is my number 1 pick. I think you guys probably know who it already is. Matt Nagy, dead last. If the Ravens hire Matt Nagy, I don't think I will ever make another video for this channel. I will protest here at the Chat Sports Studios. I think it'd be a horrible hire. Cool. He coached under Andy Reid. Sweet. Guess what? Don't care. Davis Webb. I like Davis Webb, but he's been coaching in the NFL for like 2 years. He was a player like 3 seasons ago. Maybe in 5 years, you could convince me of this. Not right now. Number 12, Kliff Kingsbury. Same thing with Mike McDaniel. You want a guy that brings a physicality. Kliff doesn't do that. Kliff has just been a loser every single place he goes. He was a loser at Texas Tech. Never made it to a Big 12 championship game. Somehow got the Arizona Cardinals job. Guess what? They lost there. No postseason success. Okay? Then he goes to the Washington Commanders. He gets fired after 2 years. Great first season with Jane Daniels. Sure, he was hurt this year, but still, man, I've got no interest in Kliff Kingsbury. Nate Scheelhaase, not because I don't think he would be a disaster. Just think he's a little too young. I think it's a little too early. Kind of similar with my thoughts on Davis Webb. Mike McDaniel's coming in at number 10. Again, OC hire, I'd love it. Head coach, I'm not super interested in it. Joe Brady comes in at number 9. Love with what he's been able to do with a guy like Josh Allen. But Joe Brady wouldn't fire me up. He just wouldn't. No particular reason. I just don't think that'd be too inspiring of a head coach hire. Kevin Stefanski comes in at number 8. Look, a lot of people would hate the Kevin Stefanski hire more than I would. I think he got dealt a pretty horrible hand in Cleveland. They're a horrible team, horrible organization as it is, and then they went ahead and gave Deshaun Watson the biggest contract in NFL history. Look, it's hard to win when you do that. Vance Joseph comes in at number 7. At this point, we're like kind of middle of the list. At this point, a lot of these guys, I'd be like, cool, that'd be fine. Nothing crazy. The thing I do like about Vance Joseph is he's got those Sean Payton offensive connections. He's failed as a head coach before, which, funny enough, I kind of like that because you have incentive to not do the same things you've done before. Same reason I like Brian Flores a lot. And his defenses have been great. I believe he could bring in a good OC as well. Anthony Weaver comes in at number 6. Look, I like Anthony Weaver a lot as a person. I think he'd be an awesome leader. I think the offensive coordinator hire would be very, very important. If you want to get fired up about Anthony Weaver, go watch a press conference of him where he talks about violence being a part of the game. It's absolutely electric. Make sure there's no brick walls around you because you're going to want to run through them. Chris Shula comes in at number 5. All of these guys, I would not mind at all. My top 5, I'd be like, sweet, let's run it. Get me to 2026 season as quickly as you can. Chris Shula, for all the reasons I already mentioned, I think I'd be excited about him. Jesse Minter, kind of the same. Big concern would be that offensive coordinator hire. Clint Kubiak comes in at number 3. I know I said defensive mind, but Kubiak seems like one of those guys, like I said a couple of minutes ago, who would still be able to bring in that play like a Raven mentality, even though he is an offensive guy. Feels like he coaches with toughness. He emphasizes toughness in the way they run the football, the way they block, and Seattle is doing unbelievable things. Robert Saleh, number 2. Look, if you don't believe in Robert Saleh, I don't know what to tell you. No Nick Bosa, no Fred Warner. That defense for San Francisco was still unbelievable this year. They just won a playoff game on the road at the Lake. He got dealt a horrible hand in New York. I think he deserves a second chance, as does Brian Flores. Always will be, always has been my number 1 guy. If you hire Brian Flores, you knock it out of the park. That's going to do it for today's show. Make sure you guys got me followed on socials. Twitter, Instagram, @JoeyPeterson8. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well.